All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to have a few questions from some of the student organizers of the event, and then Stephen is kind enough to do some audience Q&A as well. So I want to introduce members of the Harvard Secular Society, and Greta, why don't you come on up and start us off?
Hi, my name is Greta. I'm a senior in the Harvard Secular Society. You've spoken before about how religion does not have a monopoly on art or on beauty. How has your humanism been a source of creative inspiration for you? And as a follow-up to that, do you think that humanism lends itself to comedy?
Does humanism
lend itself to comedy, specifically?
It's an interesting point. I don't have a problem with the fact that some of the artists I most greatly admire and reverence in human history have devoted their art to the prevailing power, which has often been the church. I'm not sure that I could live very happily without J.S. Bach in my life, without the art of many sculptors, painters, architects, and musicians who have given their all in the service of a faith which they may well have believed in, they may not have believed in. It's not my business to inquire into that. I think the mystery of art is that it doesn't require a sound intellectual political base. It requires something emotional and human, well, which is to say, it requires something that abnegates emotion. I've always loved the quotation by T.S. Eliot about poetry. He says, poetry is not the expression of emotion, it is the denial of emotion. It is not the expression of personality, it is the denial of personality. People are very shocked by that, but anybody who's ever received amateur poems that have made one shudder and, well, vomit, will always know that that is the reason. People think art is about emotion. Of course it is. The experience of art is wholly emotional. But the greatness of artists is so much in holding back from their own personality and from basically jizzing their emotion all over the page or all over the painting or whatever it is, because that's not what art is about. And so I don't think, in a sense, I don't think humanism is relevant. I think you can have someone like Bulgakov writing The Master and Margarita, surely one of the greatest novels of the 20th century, under a pernicious tyranny, such as, the height of Stalinist Russia. Is it necessary to live in Stalinist Russia to write a great novel? Clearly not. But nor is it necessary not to. Is it necessary to live in a humanist world in order to write great things? I don't think so. The beauty of humanism is that it isn't a project. I don't know what it is. It's a difficult word. We're, to some extent this evening, we're all sort of skating coyly around words like agnostic and atheist. I happen to be an atheist in as much as I think I'd rather say that, I don't believe in God, a God, or gods, rather than I don't know. I just don't believe in them. But I think we also know we live in an age in which, a lot of people with very strong religious views, ones that they really are very, very, very antsy about, very keen about, they love nothing more than to talk about fundamentalist atheists. Ho, ho, ho. How clever. Oh, I see, they've taken the fundamentalist word and put it on atheists. Well, it doesn't play. It doesn't play at all, because it's not a project. It's not a church. That's the point. So as far as art is concerned, I think, it's kind of irrelevant. I don't wish to diss humanism by saying it's irrelevant. I think the other thing is, historically, you have to separate humanism from its modern meaning. Peter Abelard is often regarded as one of the first humanists, or Erasmus. These were all divines or church people. They were the first humanists in as much as they were the first people just to begin to open the book of inquiry, as opposed to just opening another manuscript of the Bible or the Gospels or of one of the mystics. And they were truly religious people. And then humanism then meant just beginning to look at the world as if man were the measure of all things, rather than God being the measure of all things. Then, as you probably know, the Enlightenment was not a period of atheism. It's not for us to say, oh, I bet Voltaire really was an atheist. He was what we would now call a deist, which is to say he probably believed that there was a God who made the universe, but that what his motives were in making the universe, or her motives were in making the universe, it was not for us to say. There was no message from the God. The God had no interest in us. The God was either morally neutral or possibly even malicious. That's the way they lived through their age. So I don't know is the answer. That's a very long way of saying I just don't know. But it's, but it's a good question.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Greta. Thank you. This is how the KGB works. Just one interrogator after another, never letting you sleep. Yes.
Hi, Mr. Fry. I'm Chelsea Link. I'm an officer of the Secular Society, but I'm also the president of the Harvard College Interfaith Council. So I actually thought a lot of the points you made in your speech were really interesting. So you said that you don't think it's a good priority to try to like deconvert people or preach atheism. But I think that that's maybe easier in ideas than in actions, I guess. So you said at the Intelligence Squared debate that you genuinely believe that the Catholic Church is not a force for good in the world. But you also said that you consider yourself someone who is filled with love and whose only purpose in life is to achieve love. So I guess I'm wondering how you sort of navigate the boundary between trying to correct the injustices in the world that often do come from religion, and also trying to avoid preaching and falling into the same traps that we don't like seeing from them, I guess. So what do you think is the best way to achieve love in the world?
It's a very good question, and I wish I knew the answer. Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is so easy to become preachy about these things, and even in excoriating some acts of the church, apart from the obvious ones that you could excoriate, you know, the covering up of child rape and things like that, for which there can be no excuse, and for which there is not enough excoriation that is possible, given the continued power and influence of so many of the church leaders. It's, you know, there is a lot you can say that is sort of, you know, you don't have to have a priestly mantle on you to say that. I mean, a lawyer would say it, and a person would say it in a bar, and we'd all share some of that horror. But then there's just as much horror you can attach to other regimes. But as I say, I'm not really interested in destroying the church or in trying to cast it down. I don't see myself as Samson pulling down the pillars and letting the whole edifice. It's not my business. It just isn't my business. I think, like most of us, we just want to be left alone. We want to be left alone by people who tell us how to live and so on. As growing up as a gay man, of course, there was a sense in which it was, you know, it was more personal for me that there were churches out there who really did think that I was, not only that I was going to roast in hell, but that I must be put in prison and I must be damned, I must be outcast, I must be, you know, in every sense anathematized just for the way I wanted, you know, to express my love and desire and all the rest of it. The way their God made me, if you want to put it. A. Houseman wrote a very good poem, The Laws of God, the Laws of Man, let them keep who keep can, you know, and I, you know, so one has personal reasons, if you like, for being quite angry at what religion has done and continues to do in making people unhappy and in continuing to foster an atmosphere in which so many young gay people do attempt suicide or feel absolutely miserable and dreadful. That's a bit of special pleading on my part, if you will. But yeah, how, I don't know. The point is, once, I think it was Benjamin Disraeli who once said, never apologize, never explain. Your friends already understand, and your enemies will never believe you. So it's kind of pointless to try and say, look, I'm doing this, I'm just trying to say what I think. If people choose to misunderstand you, they will see you as a symbol of everything wicked, everything self-righteous, and I, you know, can easily be characterized as a pompous, self-regarding, preening, you know, self-loving figure who has the, you know, the arrogance to lay down the law on decent, God-fearing people. And if people choose to interpret what I say like that, there's nothing I can do about it. You can just hope that most people who have intelligent ears to listen can separate things properly. And I think they can, you know? Especially in a place like this, I would hope they can. Good heavens. Thank you very much.